Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Command Point. My name's Ryan, and today I'm here with Shane. Shane, some important kill team related stuff happened today. The latest FAQs are out. The latest errata updates are out. And so we thought it would be a good idea today to, give you guys our thoughts as to where the factions stand now, essentially.
Yeah, it seems like we're not going to be getting like an actual balance patch or another box for at least over a month. So, I mean, what we have at the moment is pretty much what the game is going to be for the next couple big tournaments, which are LVO and KTO coming up. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like a good time. Good a time as any.
Yeah,
you want to kick us off? Where are we starting here?
Yeah, I think we'll just start with what we have right up front here, and we're going to start off with demons. So you're the demonic expert here.
I think demons are one of the better compendium teams. I would say they're probably like top 5 compendium team if I had to guess. To me, they're a solid B tier team, maybe like upper B tier. They have the benefit of having 12 activations, which is something that is usually reserved for like bespoke teams. 12 activations is amazing. And they have a lot of really strong bodies like bloodletters and plague bearers. The problem really is, for starters, you need all 4 demons for different situations. And the competitive roster, you can only get 3 demon fire teams. So you're not going to have an answer to every faction in a demon roster, just like as the compendium works right now with the fire teams. And the second thing is they don't have a lot of amazing ploys and equipment. They're really you just get a bunch of bodies, and the bodies that you have are good, and you have a lot of activations. But beyond that, you're not going to like catch people off guard. It's just how well you can pilot like a horde basically of strong models. So
yeah. So without getting too deep into it, you said that you could only ever bring 3 demon fire teams. What would those, in a competitive like tournament roster, what would those 3 fire teams be?
For a while, my outlook was you'd probably go bloodletters and then demonettes and then pinks. And then I thought, well, plague bearers are really good too. So maybe you could do without demonettes. So I swapped out the demonettes for plague bearers. And then I thought, oh, well, I kind of need that dash. So I swapped out the pinks for demonettes. And then I realized, oh, well, I kind of need shooting. So I swapped the bloodletters for pinks. And then eventually I realized, oh, I really need bloodletters too, because sometimes they need AP and the models are good. And that was the moment when I realized this team just doesn't have what it needs. It's like an endless cycle. So
Gotcha.
I actually think the best way to do it, honestly, is to just abandon versatility and maybe go like bloodletters and then 2 plague bearer fire teams and just lean heavily into one archetype, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Because I think you're gonna have more success with that than trying to like force a square peg into a round hole. You know what I mean?
Guess we'll move on here to the Asuryani, or the Craft Worlds.
Yeah, I feel like we keep talking about them.
Yeah, I'm just going to save everybody's time here because we've had like 3 or 4 videos in the past month that has mentioned or talked about them in some capacity. I'm just going to put them in F tier.
They are the worst team in the game.
Yep.
And if you want to hear our full thoughts on it, watch our video, The Worst Faction and Kill Team, because that just came out, and we'll even maybe put it up on the screen for you to click on if you haven't watched it yet.
So next up, another Eldari team, the Drakari.
Drakari, when the game came out, before we were swarmed with bespoke teams, and it was just Octarius and Compendium. Comrades were one of the better teams, I think. I think they were like for a little bit like a top 5 team in the game. Since then, a lot of really good teams have come out, and I think Comrades have been figured out a little bit more. I wouldn't put them in C tier, but I do think they're a fellow B tier team for me. Probably going to end up being low B tier, but you can do well with them at a tournament for sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, the chassis are a bit weak. I still think they're really good in the right hands, but when you compare them to like some of the teams coming out right now, it's hard to really highly rate Comrades,
So moving on to the last of the Eldari, the Harlequins.
One of the very best teams in the game, and I would put them up in S tier, not S plus tier. S tier, I think that they only have like a few bad matchups. They're so mobile. They can kill almost anything with the right loadout. They die easy, but it's hard to actually hit them because of Domino Field, as you know. Yeah, I mean, they're like kind of like an elite team with the bodies of like a semi horde almost.
Yeah, 8 bodies, each with 3 activations. It's they're pretty insane to play against.
Yeah, and they fly. And honestly, with the boards that KTO and LVO are going to be played on, with all the dense terrain and just like a million crates everywhere.
Oh yeah.
I think the flying Harlequins could do extremely well in that kind of environment.
Very interesting. Alrighty, so next up, I think those are the greenskins?
Correct. Yeah, those are greenskins. So greenskins, I went through a big phase of playing a lot of greenskins when I was going through my compendium.
It was just a phase?
I mean, yeah. It was kind of like my whole compendium exploration was a phase, and greenskins were a big part of that. And I honestly think greenskins are one of the better compendium teams as well. They can actually, I think in some matchups against the A and S tier teams, not S++, but A and S tier teams, they can occasionally punch above their weight. They have the most wounds that you can put on any kill team. I think they clock out at like 113 if you're on 2 boy fire teams. They're extremely good. They have good shooting. I would say if you spec into it, they have better shooting than commandos. The thing about greenskins that is disappointing is that they, like a lot of compendium teams, they kind of suffer from a lack of versatility. They don't have any crazy tricks. They're just good. And I think they're worse than demons. I think in a vacuum, I think they're better than Comorites. So I would put them in between those teams in B tier. Yeah, the demon melee seems better to me, and the demon shooting, if you really spec into it, is probably better. I don't know. It's close. I mean, they're very close.
Yeah. All right, so we have got the Necrons up next. Necrons are pretty lackluster. Just across the board in terms of, they're slow and they do have like the reanimation protocol thing, which thankfully is not as crazy as it was in last edition. So I think that's definitely one of their strengths, but compared to a lot of the other teams, they're definitely in the lower tiers. What do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. They're very one-dimensional, I would say. Flayed ones are pretty bad, so this, like, their best model is the Immortal, so a lot of the time you're just running 8 Immortals, which is not a bad team, but it's very one-dimensional. It's very slow, like you mentioned, and a lot of the better teams are going to just run, like, quite literally run laps around Necrons. If you get injured, you're at 2-inch movement, which is just horrible. Yeah, I think Necrons are really bad. They do one thing well, and that is shoot, but
that's not enough to get across the board and score objectives.
At this stage, I mean, players know how to play against something like that. So I'd say they're D tier. If you're playing against Necrons, you can basically just hide and conceal the whole game and charge pass. Even you don't even need to fight them. Like if you just charge an Immortal force, like you don't even fight them, they're kind of like done, right? They can't fall back.
So that is so funny to think about. Oh my goodness! Wow.
Because they're not really going to beat you in melee for the most part. If you're a melee team, and if they fall back, they have 0 APL left. It's just like, it's rough, man. Necrons have it bad this edition.
It's tough out here for a Necron. Here we have the Tau Hunter Cadre.
I think they're also pretty bad. I thought that they had potential when the game came out, but a lot of their potential is really tied to stealth suits, which we have slowly realized are not that great, actually. Only 2 APL is pretty rough for stealth suits. If they were 3 APL, I think it would be a very different story. It's a really it's a shooting-based team, and in my opinion, it's a worse shooting team than Necrons. Because, I mean, Necrons, at least, they're slow and stuff, but they have extremely hard-hitting shooting.
Yeah.
Not that the Tau shooting isn't hard-hitting, but they're just very one-dimensional. They don't have a lot of, like, crazy tricks going on. So, I mean, right now, I see Hunter Cadres as, like, below Necron's D-tier team.
We have got the Mercenaries up next. We got the Crew. People might be surprised as to what we think about Crew.
I think Crew are pretty good.
They are not F tier.
Yeah, definitely not. I don't even think they're D tier. I mean, it's I'm probably going to stop there. Honestly, I've seen them ranked higher than where we have them in other people's tier lists, so this can't be that crazy. I think they're C tier, like a low C tier. They have a ton of activations, which is always good.
Yeah, how many bodies can they field?
Well, they can field 13, but if you take the crew talks, which you will, it's 12. They have a lot of tricks. Like, they're very weak. They're bad at shooting. They're bad in melee. But they just have lots of bodies. They have lots of tricks. They have like 10-inch charges on these dogs. The Crutox is 3 APL, and he's like kind of a monster. He's got 16 wounds. They're lacking in terms of like some basic things. Like they don't have a lot of grenades. Their offensive output limits them pretty hard, I think. Like they're one of the few teams in the game that I think actually kind of struggles against elite teams. Like they just don't have a real way to kill elites outside of the Crutox and melee. But against other big teams, which fortunately for Crute are the teams you're going to see the most commonly, like teams with a lot of activations like them, Crute can kind of make it work.
Yeah.
It's not pretty, but they can do it, I think. And I'm curious to see if more people run Crute. If I had to guess, Crute's probably a team that's not going to get a bespoke team for a while. I could be wrong on that.
If ever, I would venture to say, which is a shame because there's a lot of potential, I think, for like cool, like unique Crute, like bounty hunter mercenary models.
Oh, for sure. That would be such a fun team.
There was that one bounty hunter in the Blackstone Fortress box that you never saw yet running in the old edition. So
that is true, and it'd be a cool box team too, like with new models. But I just don't see them ever doing it. They can punch above their weight a little bit with all these horde teams floating around, and don't underestimate the Crute boys out here.
All right, so next up we have the Hive Fleets. We have the Tyranids.
They're another team that I think started out the gate as one of the very best and have been kind of slowly outshined and to an extent figured out. There's the obvious 10 gene stealers. I mean, we've all played against 10 gene stealers, right? Eventually people realize, grenades are really good against that. Not that it like completely solves the matchup, because 10 gene stealers are still really good.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's a pretty inflexible team. I would say Tyranids are still hanging on as an A-tier team, but barely. They do have so many tricks, and their ploys are amazing, and their equipment is really good, and they're a really good melee team, even though I do think they're lacking in shooting a little bit with the warriors. Like those warrior gunners, sometimes they just blow you up, and other times they just do nothing, at least in my experience.
Yeah.
I think they're still A-tier, just barely. They're probably the worst A-tier team we're going to have on this list. You can take a lot of bodies, you can hit pretty hard, you have some really strong ploys. So I wouldn't be underestimating Tyranids. A lot of people seem to have stopped playing them too. I don't know, like it seems like when the game came out, like there were so many people playing Tyranids, and now it's like, where did all the Tyranids go?
Yeah, and it's not even like they became bad or anything. They didn't get like double or triple nerfed into the ground, so
yeah, they've just been kind of outshined by the
figured out
a lot of the white dwarf and box, and then people just, like you said, figuring out the matchups a little bit better.
Yeah. So next up we have the Brood Covens.
They are a good team, but it's, I mean, with Wormblade coming out and like all these bespoke teams coming out, I don't think that that Brood Coven is as good as a lot of people thought at first, including me. I would say that they are decent still. They're probably like a really middle of the pack team.
Yeah.
I would probably say like the very top of C. Like probably definitely above Crute. I think they're way better than Crute, but not enough so that I would put them in B tier. Because really, I see Comorites as being like a low B tier, and I think Comorites are better than Brood Coven at this point. Brood Coven does have some cool melee, and their shooting's okay. They're kind of similar to Crute, I think, but unlike Crute, they can kill.
Yeah.
They aren't just like sneaking around.
So up next we have Veteran Guardsmen. This team I feel like has had a resurgence in recent months. I don't even know if I would call it a resurgence, because initially it seemed like the commandos were the better team out of the box when this new edition of Kill Team launched, right? And now I think people, like top tier players, have finally gotten around to really figuring out the way that Vet Guard works. So we've been seeing them do a lot better recently. So what are your thoughts on the Vet Guard?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. It's not so much a resurgence as it is just they're a tough team to play. And even for the top tier players, it's taken them a while to kind of like really get the hang of this team. They might have like the highest skill ceiling, I would say, of all the factions. As far as, or I guess the highest skill floor, to play them well.
Gotcha.
And I guess this is a good point to bring up the fact that, like, conceptually on this tier list, we are rating teams by the potential, not how easy they are to play.
Yep.
Like, I think how easy a team is to play should have no bearing on these rankings, because a team like Space Marines or Grey Knights are really easy to play, and we don't think those are very good teams. And I think really all these rankings are assuming you're playing them the best that you can, this is where they probably sit. So I would say Vet Guard are an S tier team, probably below Harlequins, I would say. But even that, I mean, a lot of the S tier teams that we're going to look at are close to each other. I mean, Vet Guard are quite the beast to figure out, but I mean, we've seen really good players put together pretty amazing results with them. So yeah, they're good.
Yeah, so between, out of curiosity, between the ancillary support option and the 4 additional veteran guardsmen to supplement your kill team, which do you think is better?
Definitely the 4 extra guardsmen.
Yeah.
And I think part of the better results, the improvement in the Vet Guard results, are the Vet Guard players figuring that out, realizing that the artillery and stuff, the ancillary support, is almost never worth it. Because when you think about it, like, you're getting rid of 4 models on your team just for like 2 attacks. So like, you really need to be really efficient. Like, you need to be getting good results out of the artillery support to make up for the fact that you're giving up 4 models just to get it. So
yeah,
almost always I think the 4 extra guys is better.
So next up is Orc Commandos. I love the Orc Commandos, even with like the Dash change in the latest FAQ coming out, where you can only Dash with your Daka gun, or whatever it is the weapon is called for the Daka boy. You know, this team is still really, really good. They still have a lot of models in it that have a lot of, in my opinion, like game-breaking abilities, like the Breacher Boy and the Grot, that are just so good. In my opinion, I would put them in S tier. What do you think?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the dynamite stuff was really cheesy and kind of OP, and now that that's gone, they're still absolutely really good, because they still got really good bodies, 10 wounds apiece. They've got Justice Scratch still. They've got a lot of like really insane stuff just going on with the team itself. Yeah, I mean, they have so many tricks, and they've got good bodies on top of it. So yeah, I would say they're S tier, and probably better than Harlequins. Because I mean, once you're at the top, you have to like look at the matchups, and everybody seems to agree that Commandos do well under Harlequins. It's probably their worst matchup. So yeah, I would say that Commandos are one of the best teams in the game still.
Gotcha. So next up here, we have our first White Dwarf kill team. We have the Hunter Clade of the Adeptus Mechanicus. I recently played up against this team, against Micromancer, who was running the team in our Command Point Tournament Series winter event. Yeah, I can confirm this team is probably better than Heretic Astartes, at the very least. They have a lot of tricks, they have a lot of aura buffs, and you can have so many wounds in that team, because you have like 10 bodies, and each one of those infiltrators that you can take is 10 wounds apiece. So like, it's a lot for a team to chew through. What do you think of them?
Yeah, I mean, I think of all the bespoke teams so far, they're probably the worst, but still, they're a really good team. I don't think I think they're probably B tier, maybe like high B tier.
Yeah.
They do have a lot of tricks that they can do. They seem flat out better to me than Compendium AdMech, which is like a more shooty version. Yeah, Forge World is tough. I've experimented playing with them a little bit, and they're not that easy to play, but I definitely see how someone could take them to a pretty high level. Yeah, I think the skill ceiling's higher, so I would put them above demons. Yeah, I mean, it's hard for a Compendium team to outperform a bespoke team. There's only a few, I think, that can do it. I'd say the worst bespoke team is still better than almost every Compendium team, so.
All right, so on to the next White Dwarf faction. We have got the Warp Coven here. I haven't had a lot of experience with Warp Coven, but from what we can see from the data, is that they have mixed results, really. What do you think of them?
Yeah, they're certainly not that easy to play. I would say that the skill ceiling, though, and the crazy things that they're capable of make them a better team than Tyranids, who we have an A tier. So I would say they're an A tier team, but the thing about it is, like, there's so much cooked into this team that there's a lot of decision making, more than most teams in the game, as far as the list that you take and the way that you load up your sorcerers and what you supplement your sorcerers with, that it's easy to get a little bit lost in that process, which means I think less experienced Warp Coven players might struggle. I don't know if we've seen Warp Coven played at like the top of its potential yet. I'm excited to see what that looks like, but with stuff like ephemeral instability, basically cutting your dash and charges by 2 inches, they can really tarp at teams and slow a lot of melee teams down. The ability to move 9 inches from your drop zone with fly and hit a team with blast is just insane. That's something that I think is going to single-handedly win Warp Coven players games. Yeah, they're really strong. They blow Compendium Thousand Suns out of the water for sure. So definite A tier for me, at least.
So next up, we have another bespoke team. This is the Sisters Novitiates. You and I were talking a little bit before we started recording here, and this faction in the Command Point Tournament series that we have going on right now has been performing really, really well. Like both of the players that we were talking about are currently undefeated right now, right? And we're 3 rounds in.
I think they're 7-0 right now, which is making them the only undefeated team, and a couple good players are playing them too. So we could very well see them win the whole tournament. Novitiates are definitely, when they came out, a lot of people seemed a little underwhelmed just because the chassis themselves are pretty weak.
Right.
But over time, good players have started to prove that the faith point system and a lot of their abilities they can be so oppressive to play against.
Yeah.
Like racking up those faith points, they can just say you're like you run up to a guy with a crack grenade, you're playing Novitiates, and you really need this guy to die. You can pretty much guarantee that you're going to get 4 hits just because of faith points.
Yep.
Like you can just push that through, guarantee that you're just going to force them to take at least some amount of damage, and then they have to make saves too. And it's like, it's an insanely good team. I would say they're easily S tier. I've heard some people say that they're the second best team in the game, but I would say that they're, right now for me, they're below Harlequins, Commandos, and Vet Guard. Really, really strong team.
Next up, out of that same Kill Team Chalneth box, we have got the Tau Pathfinders. Everybody who, has been subscribed to us for any amount of time should know that this team is remarkably broken. They have a certain chain activation that you can perform with their unique abilities that allows you to activate 4 models at the start of a turn, just completely uninterrupted, and it can lead to a devastating turn for whoever the opponent is of those Pathfinders. So unfortunately, this thing was not FAQ'd away in the latest FAQ drop. Hopefully they will be patched soon, and because they are just completely broken, Shane and I are both in agreement here that they are in S tier. S plus tier, I should say. Yeah. So for a while, I had these guys in just regular S tier with Harlequins, Commandos, but it just felt wrong. We were talking about before, how all these teams are measured on the tier list by the highest denominator of play, the best that you can play them. So, and this might be a hot take because everybody has pretty much said that they are in agreement that Pathfinders are broken, but there's always this little caveat at the end where it's like, oh well, they're not as broken as Talons were. That doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, and I think my hot take is that I think that they are as broken as Talons were. The only difference is Talons were easier to play, pick up and play. Yeah. Pathfinders are not as easy to pick up and play, but when you're talking about tournaments and competitive play, that doesn't matter. Like you said, it basically does not matter because you need to be a good player to win a tournament anyway. And just because pathfinders are not as oppressive at lower levels of play does not mean that I'm going to give them like marks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because Talons, even at their most broken, in my opinion, had a couple of questionable matchups. Like I think it was early in the game, so we didn't really have a lot of time to figure it out either.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Talons had some rough matchups against Harlequins and possibly like all Scions, or even like Vetguard maybe had some play against them.
Right.
It was never a winning matchup, but I think that there were. I mean, I think you could argue that Harlequins had a winning matchup against even the most broken Custodes that existed.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I think at the highest level, I don't think any team in the game wins against Pathfinders. I don't think Pathfinders have a bad matchup if you're playing them well. And if you even like compare Pathfinders to Veteran Guard, who we have as the 4th best team right now on this tier list, I think Pathfinders just blow them out of the water. Just on like a side-by-side comparison, like the Gunners are about as good for the most part. They have about the same amount of activations. But like, look at like a comms like veteran guardsman or like a medic veteran guardsman, like the weak like support guys. They have like las guns and they hit on 4s. Even the weakest Pathfinder models, yeah, they hit on 4s just like veteran guardsmen, but they have damage 4-5, and this is before factoring in like marker lights and stuff. So I think you get rid of Worthy Cause, and they're probably still the best team in the game in my opinion. Just with everything, but Worthy Cause is the biggest factor in them being so broken right now, on top of like chain activations, like supplementing it. So that's my hot take.
All right, next up we have got a kill team that you've been experimenting a lot with recently, and that is the new Wormblade kill team.
Yeah, and I think Wormblade is awesome. I think they're so fun to play.
Yeah,
they're probably my favorite team right now. And as far as the power level goes, and it is early on, and you know, it could turn out that I'm a little overrating or maybe underrating them, but I think that they're A tier, and I think they're higher than Warp Coven. They're like, having played them quite a bit at this point, they have the activations, they have a lot of tricks, they have some amazingly strong models. I think they're very similar in power level to Warp Coven, to be fair. I would edge it out for Wormblade though if I'm doing like a side-by-side comparison, just because of the extra models, and they just seem like they have a lot of good matchups against some of these S tier teams. I don't think they have a good matchup against Pathfinders, but that goes without saying. The models like Kellermorph and Locus, I think are going to cause a lot of problems, and just the matchup spread, I think for a team like Wormblade is going to end up being really favorable for tournament play in particular. Remains to be seen, I guess. We haven't really seen them in a tournament yet, but I think that I think it's going to age well. I think they're an A tier team. I don't think they're an S tier team, but they can perform really well in tournament play. So
yeah, they seem like a lot of fun to play, and they have a lot of good tricks with deploys, like you said. That one of them basically amounts to reserves, really, yeah, if we want to get technical about it, from the old edition. So that should tell you something. Next up, we have got the Grey Knights. Grey Knights, like a lot of the loyalist Space Marines, are not that good. Not that good. Shane, how bad do you think they are?
Yeah, the last time we did a tier list, I got a lot of crap for saying that Grey Knights aren't good. And since then, my opinion has actually lowered on them. So I think they're extremely one-dimensional. I think the teams that they're best at killing, which are like horde teams, are for the most part just, I mean, between out-activating them and just most of the higher model count teams just having more tricks, I don't even think they're good against the things that they're like good against, if that makes sense. And as far as elite teams, I don't think they're very good against elite teams because they have no real source of armor piercing. They only have 5 models, so against a team like Traders, they're out-activated. Against a team like Talons that they out-activate, they're just so much weaker than. Like Stormbolters, as good as they are, are not going to do a lot of damage to a Custode. So, I mean, yeah, they're probably good against like basic Space Marines.
Which,
And
I
outside of
mean,
that-
like, everything is good against basic Space Marines.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'll give them is that they're easy to play, and I think at lower levels of play that you might find some success. But you know, like we've already said a few times,
That
we
doesn't
don't really
matter.
factor that.
Yep.
Yeah, it doesn't matter at all. So they're D tier to me. They're below the teams we have in D tier. I think they're honestly one of the worst teams in the game at higher levels of play.
Next up, we have got the Tempestus Scions. So Tempestus Scions started off pretty interesting. Like you mentioned earlier, they were one of the teams that a lot of people thought would have a good matchup into the pre-nerf Custodes. How are you feeling about them these days?
Yeah, I've risen on Scions quite a bit. I think they're top 5 in the compendium right now. I'd say the closest team in power level to them would probably be Hunter Clade, and I think that Scions are B tier. I think Scions are better than Hunter Clade. Honestly, I think that being able to get a free strategic play every turn, the fact that they have 4-up saves, 8 wounds, they have 3-up ballistic skill on everything, 10 bodies.
Yeah.
The comms can give an APL to 2 models every turn. They're really good.
Yeah.
They're really solid. They're not very complex either. I just see them as outperforming most teams in the compendium, and I think they slightly outperform Hunter Clade, but it's close. Hunter Clade does have a lot of melee, like you mentioned with the Sicarians, but I think they're both really strong teams. In the hands of a good player, you can do pretty well with them.
All right, so here we have the AdMech Forge Worlds.
I think they're C tier. For me, they're like they're a step down from Hunter Clade. At first, when it came out, it seemed like they were close, but the one thing that Forge World has over Hunter Clade is that you can run a shootier team.
Yeah.
You can double up on plasma potentially, but you're getting rid of your melee output.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't think it ends up being that great of a team. I think that they're probably worse than Brood Coven. They're probably better than Kroot. Hunter Clade just has a lot of tools that Forge World don't, that just bring them to the next level. And I think they're like conceptually and thematically close enough that I don't really think there's much of a reason to play Forge World over Hunter Clade. Like if you have the models for Forge World, you have the models for Hunter Clade. Yeah, so I rate Hunter Clade a lot higher. I think the skill ceiling is a lot higher for them. You can play Forge World, but I think if you really want to do well, you're best off making the jump to Hunter Clade.
All right, next up here we have the Ecclesiarchy. We got the Sisters of Battle. I thought that they were kind of like middling, like B tier for a compendium team when the game first came out. But now, with all of the bespoke teams that are out right now and the white dwarf teams that have come out in recent days, I think like at best they're probably C.
When I did the last tier list, I actually had them D tier, and I think I've risen on them since then. And I do agree with you that they're I almost said S. They're C tier. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes down to, like, if you're running melee with this team, you're either running a reliable melee option that can't do mission actions with Arcos, or you're running a more unreliable melee option that can do mission actions and can take equipment with Repentia. And if you take Repentia, you're really shoehorned into, in my opinion, running like Scourging Barbs and doing as much as you can to make up for the fact that they hit on 4s.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the demon problem almost, where it's like you can't get everything you want in one list, it feels like. But they're okay. I mean, 10 Sisters, it's 10 models with 3-up saves and 3-up ballistic skill.
Yeah.
So I mean, that is decent against a lot of things, but they just seem lacking to me, and like you said, they don't really compete very well with the bespoke teams at all. So yeah, I mean, I think they're definitely worse than Forge World, but they're better than Kroot in my opinion. So probably like middling C tier right now. So that's saying that they don't compete at all with the Novitiates. They're bespoke alternative.
They are completely different teams. So next up we have got the Adeptus Custodes, or the Talons of the Emperor, I should say. Still a good team.
Probably the second best team in Compendium. They're not close to what they were before, which was just completely outright broken. And I think the nerfs have really helped. I think they were good nerfs. I think there's a lot of teams that straight up are limited by the fact that they just don't really have a great answer to Talons. Since the nerfs, we've seen a lot more presence of the 5 sisters, 2 Custodes, rather than just always running 4 Custodes.
Yep.
And that team is really strong in its own right. I would say that they are like high A tier, like probably better than the 2. Yeah, probably like the top of A tier, I would say. Like I think they definitely are outclassed right now by the teams in S tier and S plus, obviously. Against the rest of the teams in the game, they're perfectly fine. They're really good. Custodes are still pretty insane models. Nothing's going to change that.
Yeah.
And running 5 sisters with faceplates with 2 Custodes, it's like having 5 Marines basically with 2 APL and then a couple Custodes.
That sounds nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, their only weakness, I think, is the fact that they don't have grenades, really, unless you're playing against, like, Psychers or Demons. And outside of that, I mean, I don't know. They're just extremely good.
Okay, next up we are moving on to the Traitor Space Marines, the Heretic Astartes. This team they're okay. They're probably the second best Marine faction. You know, compared to Warp Coven, if we want to count Warp Coven as a Marine faction. I would probably slot them into B tier.
They're definitely a team that has really suffered from power creep. With all these bespoke teams coming out that out-activate them, and people kind of learning how to play around the advantage of having more models, it is not the easiest team to play in the current, like, competitive climate, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think at the end of the... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've been playing them in the Command Point tournament series, and even against teams where I want to take the cultists, so I have like 11 bodies or however many it is just to like kind of like keep up on activations, you know, the cultists just, they don't really cut it for doing anything other than performing actions, because they're just so, I don't know, they can't stand up to anybody or anything by themselves.
They just exist to stall for your Marines to activate later.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's still other teams out there that just simply have more activations with better quality models. So it's like, even if you take those cultists, you should still consider yourself to be running an elite team, which I know it's like weird, but trust me, just trust me on this one.
Yeah, like when you're stalling with raiders, you're like moving cultists up the board to die, or like cap objectives and then die. When you're stalling with like Vet Guard, you're giving a model an extra APL, or you're like setting up an aura for another model. It's just not even the same level of play.
Yeah.
Really. I mean, I would put them. I mean, how do you feel about like between greenskins and comrades, right? Like tail end of B tier.
I think that's good. Okay, next up we have got the Death Guard. Death Guard I honestly have not really seen much talk about the Death Guard in this edition of Kill Team, hardly at all. I think that comes down to their like movement, really.
This was the other faction people gave me crap for in the last tier list for ranking too low. I had them in D tier, but unlike with Grey Knights, I actually my opinion is raised quite a bit on them, and I think I was underrating the team as a whole, especially Poxwalkers. There is a guy in the tournament series that has gone 3-1 in the Swiss.
Wow.
And he playing Death Guard and running Poxwalkers every time. Just like he beat Talons, he beat Pathfinders, and he beat Warp Coven before losing to, I think it was Novitiates in the end. And I think that there's a lot more with this team than meets the eye, maybe. And a lot of people, including myself, said Pathfinders were just bad. In reality, they're probably, I mean, I'd rather have Pathfinders than Cultists, I guess. Not Pathfinders,
Poxwalkers, yeah.
Yeah, Poxwalkers are just like, they can actually still do mission actions, and I forget about that sometimes. It just costs an extra APL. They're really what Death Guard does is they just move up the board, they pop Contagion, they get in your face, and they just tarp at you. And with Contagion, you're injured when you're fighting them, and it's like suddenly the Poxwalkers are not that much worse than you, because there's 2 of them probably, and there's 1 of you, so they're getting combat support, and you're injured, so you're at a -1 and they're at a +1, and they've got feel no pains. They don't really need to beat you, they just need to bog you down.
Yeah.
And they're really good at that. So right now I have them high C tier, which is last edition I had them, or last tier list I had them D tier. And I would say they're right below Brood Coven, and probably above Forge World. I know in the hands of a good player, it's possible that I'm still underrating them, and maybe I need to mess with Death Guard a little bit. Just seeing someone have so much success with Poxwalkers has really like turned my head a little bit to that faction.
Mm-hmm.
And I will admit I was a bit off about those in the last one.
Next up on the list here, we have got the Thousand Sons. Thousand Sons are definitely like outshone by the Warp Coven these days. If I had to venture a guess, you and I would probably put them into C tier. Probably more towards like middle C tier.
I honestly
right
think the only team I would play them over in C tier is Kroot, and even then it's like it's pretty close. Like they are massively outshone by Warp Coven. I would say there's like no reason to even play Thousand Sons anymore.
I don't think there is, yeah.
Like with Ecclesiarchy, like they're obviously much worse than Novitiates, but at least like they're thematically different. With Warp Coven, they're a way cooler version of Thousand Sons. They're a better version. I see them getting outperformed. Only 1 sorcerer really sucks. Rubrics without the sorcerer are pretty mediocre. I mean, really, it just comes down to you have a sorcerer and you have a Soul Reaper cannon. Then you've got this icon guy that just kind of hangs out, and then you've got Zangors, which are really not that great. I don't see a reason to play Thousand Sons. I think they're probably going to end up being one of the least represented factions going forward permanently.
Yeah. It looks like all we've got left are the Emperor's mightiest warriors. We've got the Space Marines.
Yeah.
Which are...
they not really. I'd say they're great if you like being out activated and outclassed, and you don't play competitive at all. I think they're better than, as a whole, I'd put them above Craft World, but they're F tier still to me. Scouts can maybe do some stuff. Those shotguns are pretty nice. At the end of it, it's like a really watered down version of like Scions. And then the rest of the actual Marines themselves, like the Assault Intercessors and the regular Intercessors and all the rest, they're just really mediocre.
Yeah.
They get out activated. They don't have enough tricks.
They have like gimmicks that like give those models identity, really, but they're like bad gimmicks. Like they do not make up for the lack of bodies, the lack of activations that you have.
Like they have variety on the roster, not on the kill team.
Yeah.
Like
which is a huge disadvantage.
Yeah, so with like something like Veteran Guard, like you have all your variety spread out over your kill team. Like each model does something different. With Space Marines, it's like each fire team does something different, but you're stuck with it. And it's just one thing. And yeah, they're just really bad. So I guess let's talk about Deathwatch.
Yeah, we're finishing out this tier list strong. Deathwatch, because they are like Space Marines, except they have some level of customization, I would want to put them in D tier. And because they have access to AP, I would want to put them above at least Grey Knights.
For sure. That's where I would put them. Below Tau and above Grey Knights. Because it's like they kind of suffer from the same thing that Grey Knights suffer from, but unlike Grey Knights, they don't completely suck against elite teams. Like they have some play into other elite teams.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the variety, the customization is there, but at the end of the day, it's 5 models with 11 wounds apiece, and that's really bad.
Yeah, it is. It's not hard for any of the teams higher than them really to just kind of like pick them up, and there's so few of them that it's like it's kind of like round 2. You kind of know where the game's going.
Deathwatch are, they're supposed to be tanky, right? But
yeah, these are genetically modified superhumans. They're pumped full of steroids and other things. I don't know. And they're clad in this power armor, and anything with AP can kill them. And anything with more than 6 bodies, I would give the edge to, honestly.
Yeah, and it's like you have the individual model, it's got a 3-up save, maybe it even has a 4-up invuln, it's got 11 wounds. Yeah, that's a lot tankier than like a Pathfinder. But the Deathwatch kill team has 56 wounds. The Pathfinder kill team has 90 wounds. Like the squishy teams in this game, they're not really dying that easy. Yeah. Like an individual Deathwatch model is tankier, yes, than a Pathfinder. But the Pathfinder kill team is harder to kill and wipe out than the Deathwatch kill team by a million miles. Like, it's just a huge problem, I think, and the elite teams struggle. I mean, it goes to show that these elite teams they take up 3 of the 4 bottom spots on the tier list. So that wraps up the tier list, though. Any final thoughts?
Tau OP still. Hopefully that gets rectified soon in a future FAQ or a balanced data slate. Space Marines and elite teams in general definitely need some help. The top rated teams, are either the bespoke teams or they are Harlequins or a White Dwarf team, really. Yeah, those I guess would be my closing thoughts on where we stand right now with the current kill team meta. Thank you for tuning in and watching this tier list review. We really appreciate it. We are especially thankful to our Patreon supporters over on Patreon. If you really like what we do and you've already subscribed to Command Point, feel free to go ahead and check out our Patreon. We've got some more exclusive content going on over there, early access to our videos and stuff. Thank you all for watching, and we hope to see you again in the next one.